Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be covering some really important spreadsheet things to keep in mind if you're just starting out learning spreadsheets or you're starting out and you need to upskill quickly in a very short space of time. I'm going to distill everything down to what I think you really should prioritize, which is essentially organization and housekeeping. A little bit of a different video today. As you would have noticed, I'm not in the usual place I film. I've come home for Christmas, but I still wanted to make some content and get it posted. One of my aims going into the new year is to try and be way more consistent. Hello to everyone that's new to the channel. My name's Rob, and this channel is all about productivity tips, self-improvement, and workplace skills, such as building up your skills and experience using spreadsheets. Starting out learning spreadsheets can be really difficult. I found it really difficult when I started many years ago because it's hard to know what to prioritize. It can be very easy to slip into the habit of thinking you need to learn all the various functions that are out there to use, but that really isn't the case. So one of the aspects of this channel was I really wanted to make content that would have been for someone like me all that time ago, that would have really appreciated having things really broken down and being told what to prioritize. So put simply, how well and successfully you're going to be able to work with and analyze your data set will all be down to how well you're able to organize and prepare it ready for analysis. If you start out early in your learning establishing good habits in terms of how your data is simply presented for yourself and other members of your team, it's going to make life a hell of a lot easier for everyone. So in this example that I've got for us today, it's all within the context of an e-commerce company. So looking at product sales, week-on-week sales, and lots of kind of product information. It's a made-up example, but it's basically exactly what I do in my day-to-day job. I work with spreadsheets every single day. So of the two things we're going to be looking at today, let's discuss good housekeeping tips for this data here. What I mean by housekeeping is really just a kind of a term that I use for correcting any mistakes or really just the readability of the data. If I'm a new person to this sheet, how quickly would I be able to read and understand the information that's presented on here? This kind of immediately, you might be able to tell, looks a bit of a mess and is not different whatsoever to reports and data sets that I get regularly. Within the kind of realm of general housekeeping, let's look at formatting. Let's look at what kind of formatting work needs to be done here. Firstly, the header row isn't that distinguishable from the rest of the data, and it seems someone's tried to make an attempt at adding some borders to a few cells too. If you have a keen eye for detail like me, you'll see there's a few inconsistencies in the font and the size of the product description text. There's varying row sizes too, as well as columns, and a few not available notifications, which we'll come on to in just a second. Okay, so here's one I made earlier. As you can see, this looks an awful lot better. Things are much clearer. I've removed past dodgy formatting, added color to the header section, amended the position of the titles, and enlarged the header row overall. I've also frozen this row so this stays in place when moving around the sheet. Really helpful if you have really large data sets. Text numbers are all the same size and font as well as the rows and column sizes too. I've made the product description one only that little bit bigger so you can see the whole title. So as we're dealing with week-on-week sales, I've also added two conditional format color rules to the week-on-week percent column, showing the drop or rise that each product took in sales compared to the week before. Again, thinking about readability for someone visiting this sheet really quickly and needing to know what they should pay attention to quickly, this easily will help guide their eyes. So as I'm sure you'll agree, this immediately looks an awful lot better compared to what we first received. Now, okay, so the not available notifications that you can see here in this column. Obviously, I think it's great housekeeping to get rid of these if you just leave them there, or when I've come across other documents that's got this all over the place. It's not helpful. It makes things really confusing and messy. So in this example, we have some not available notifications because I deliberately wanted to bring in the information from another tab using a VLOOKUP function. Data on that other tab doesn't match product codes here. It can't find the information on the other tab, so it gives me this. If I just travel up to the VLOOKUP function here and I just add in if error and add that in, press enter. What this cleverly does now is if I then apply this shift command down and then command D to apply the function to the whole column, as you can see, this now gets rid of all the not available notifications. Really handy, and it just leaves the cells blank. Again, the VLOOKUP function is used a lot. If you're a beginner, I wouldn't say you necessarily have to worry about what that is for the time being. That's a great way of getting rid of things. It's great housekeeping, makes the information look much cleaner and less confusing. So that's really good housekeeping, and this all now looks fantastic. Okay, so the second strand of this video is organization. We've looked at housekeeping, which is really sort of all about making sure the data is presentable, easy to understand. I guess you could almost think of organization as once everything's presentable and clean, it's then how you help people interact with it and how people can easily use it. So if we head back to the tab we've just been looking at, what I didn't mention as well is, as well as in the first example, there was a few font and sizing mistakes. There's also spelling mistakes in the product group section here. As may often be the case when you get data through, there'll be information missing. There's information missing in terms of product units that are left available and what product group they belong to. It's important that information like that is there. When you want to run sort of more in-depth analysis, it's good to know, it's good to have as much information for the products available as possible. Now, it may be someone is yet to come along and fill all of this out, but to prevent anyone just kind of like entering spelling mistakes and making everything confusing, because if there are spelling mistakes, if you spell jewelry, for instance, here 2 different ways, that could potentially be an issue when you want to go and do pivot tables and things like that. It's going to show 2 different types of jewelry product group, which isn't helpful. So to really help prevent there being any mistakes when people get to this sheet and maybe make spelling mistakes or things like that, I've entered this data validation feature here, which essentially is a way of adding a drop-down box, allowing people to only enter in an option from a specific list of entries into a cell. So they're never gonna make spelling mistakes or things like that. So you just click the arrow here, and again you can see here you've got the drop down list, and you can select whatever you want, so you're not going to have any issues there. Each time people enter stuff, it's always going to be correct. And trust me, that might seem like a small thing, adding something like this when I know there's going to be 10 people visiting the sheet and entering information. It just makes my life so much easier. Another aspect I really liked when I started learning Google Sheets is creating your own filter views. You just head to data, hover over filter views, and then create a new filter view. Here's one I made earlier that I've titled Empty Cells to Fill. When you click on it, it takes you through to this sort of your own private filter of the data, and you can basically filter the columns individually and it won't affect the main spreadsheet itself. So if you're filtering and cutting the data, it won't change what people can view who visit the document if they're not in your private filter view. This is really handy because what I've done in this example, I've titled this filter view Empty Cells to Fill. So I've filtered the columns to list only show empty cells that need information in. I can easily send a link to only this filter view to one of my colleagues who knows what information to enter, so they can quickly come through to this filter view and they can immediately be shown what they should be looking at and what they should be working on. Really makes things organized. Really love that aspect. Another really great thing to do is once you've put in all of this work, this housekeeping work to make this data look presentable, you don't want someone then changing things, so you can protect specific tabs so that if someone goes to enter something, they need to ask permission or something like that. So you just hover over the tab, right click, select Protect Sheet, and here you can make sure you've got the right tab selected, set permissions, and then you can choose specific people that you want to grant permission to edit, or just yourself and they need to come and request permission. Really handy this, especially if you put in all this work to make the data look great. This just prevents people potentially coming in and messing everything up. They might change the sizes of things, which is fine, but it maybe means that when I come back, I've got to revert things back to how I first had them. So really handy that. Okay, so there we go. That was just a few aspects. I didn't cover everything. I wanted to make things relatively bite-sized. That's kind of a few aspects within general housekeeping rules and keeping things and organization and keeping things organized with your data. I really do think that these lessons in those 2 strands we've covered should form some of the early stages of spreadsheet learnings. You know, some of this simple stuff often doesn't get covered. I think people try to kind of run before they can walk and they don't cover the basics and establish good habits when they're learning. A lot of this stuff is often covered on the job and therefore none of it really sticks and gets forgotten, and then sort of bad habits form. If I was to go back, I wouldn't worry too much about learning some of the basic or intermediate functions. I would just constantly go over and over good housekeeping tips, organizing the data, so that when I suddenly start a job and I'm tasked with managing documents, I feel confident of doing so and all the different things I can do. And also it just makes you look like a good employee. There's nothing better than when you send something to your manager or another colleague and everything's organized and they know how to use it and how to read it. It makes you look really good. But anyway, I hope you found that useful. Again, I've only covered a few bite-sized tips and tricks when it comes to organizing your data and general good housekeeping tips of spreadsheets. Comment down below some that you know that I haven't covered. I'd be interested to hear what you're used to doing in your role and what you pay attention to and good things you like to see. I'd find that very useful. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon for another video, and Happy New Year to everyone.